Welcome to the Stop Down Photography Podcast, episode 65. I'm Scott Davenport. Today's topic is the cycle of artistic improvement. Hi, welcome. Thanks for joining me. I'm glad to be back for another chat about photography, this shared passion of ours. And in today's episode, let's take one more step on our never-ending journey of photography. Our paths as artists, as visual storytellers, is not a straight path. There are switchbacks, detours, pauses, backtracking as we forge ahead with our photography. We're learning, we're growing, we're becoming stronger photographers. Yet I do believe there's a through line, there's a cycle of improvement on this artistic path. And this idea crystallized for me some in the past week. And in today's episode, I want to share these thoughts with you. If you enjoy today's podcast, please share it with a friend on social media, with your camera club. And if you can, please leave a rating on Apple Podcasts. Those ratings really help other photographers find out about the show. In last week's episode, I mentioned I started recording a new video course. It was tentatively called Photo Chalk Talks, and that name is changing because as I recorded the chapters and lessons for the course, I realized the course isn't about the markup of a photo, the chalk talk part of analyzing an image. The course turned out to be more than that. Putting this course together, it uncovered or at least made conscious to me this cycle of artistic improvement. I guess it's something I've known that we do as photographers for a while, but the act of putting together this new course, it really kind of made things gel, and the course is an entry point into this cycle. I'll share details about the course once it's finished and available. I'm targeting later this month. But for our discussion here, the course is about mindful self-critique and developing our images with expression and intent that underscore the story of the photo. And for members of the Patreon community, there's a sneak peek of this course in the Patreon feed. 2 of the videos for this course are dripping into the feed this week. So it's a little thank you for your continued support of this podcast and my other tutorials. But here, I want to talk about this concept, this cycle of artistic improvement. And it has 4 phases in this cycle. I'll call them capture, analyze, express, and reflect. And like any cycle, you can start in any phase. It's a cycle. There's no beginning or end. It just circles around and feeds back on itself. A capture, it makes sense to be a first step, right? We're photographers. We capture photos. And if you're listening to this podcast, you are already paying attention to your composition, you're checking your angles, you're choosing depth of field to suit the vision you have for a subject or a scene. I'm going to come back to the capture phase because this is a cycle of improvement after all. We don't get to make just one lap around the track, right? But of course, in order to improve, you need the base assets, the starting set of images. So capture is the first phase. The second phase is analyze. You have a set of photos, you need to look at them, right? The analyze phase. This is a self-critique of your unprocessed image. Before you bring the photo into the digital darkroom and start clicking buttons, pushing sliders, and applying filters, spend a few minutes of measured thought with your photo and ask questions about the image. What are the subjects? How do they interact? What does the photo make you feel? Where do you want your viewer to look? You understand your photo. You know the story of your photo. And this is a little different than a photo critique. You're not critiquing a finished work. You answer these questions, you're making notes, and they can be written, mental, virtual pen and paper. That part of it doesn't matter. But you're asking yourself these questions and ultimately to answer the 2 big questions. How can the story of my photo be told more strongly? And what adjustments do I need to accomplish that? When you do this, you're shifting your approach for developing your photo. Your mindset pivots to what adjustments will strengthen my photo, not just what sliders can I push. I need to recover highlights or I need to recover shadows. That's the analyze phase. You analyze the story of your photo and what adjustments may be necessary to to more strongly tell the story of your image. So capture first, analyze second. That brings us to the third phase, express. This is your post-processing. This is where you get to express yourself creatively, artistically. The key thing here is the adjustments you make are in service of your photo's story. You're leveraging that mindful assessment you did in the analyze phase. And your processing becomes more focused on your subjects. I think you'll really find this interesting. If your experience is like mine, the global adjustments happen very fast. The contrast, exposure, highlights, shadows, all of that happens very quickly. In some cases, the color adjustments happen quickly as well. Saturation, vibrance, maybe a little HSL. But you spend more time thinking about the mood of the photo. Things maybe like split tones or creative camera profiles. Maybe you're exploring the curves controls more, doing color grading there. And you'll spend much more time with localized adjustments. Your gradient tools, radial tools, brush tools, masking, those become your best friends because you're crafting and refining the story of your photo. You're using those localized adjustments to guide your viewer's eye. It's illuminating how your processing approach changes when the story of your photo, the story you want to tell, is at the forefront of your mind. So that's phase 3, express. Finally, the fourth phase, reflect. Yes, a little more measured thought with your images, right? This is a theme with me. Self-study and self-reflection as a means to improve your photography. You reflect on your finished image. You ask a few more questions. Now, coming out of the express phase, you may have post-processing on your mind, and that's fine. You may have picked up a technique or two to better convey mood or improve tonality of your image, things that did help you with the story of your photo, and those were post-processing tool-centric. But I think the real value of the reflect phase is taking that bigger step back and thinking about the story you've just told in that photo. Now, for an image that really worked, what is it that makes it all come together? Is it the framing, the focus, the gesture, the way the subjects interact? What compels you to keep looking at that scene? Make mental notes of those things. And for the images that didn't quite work, what are the problems? What would you change about the photo? How would you capture it differently to tell a stronger story? And that brings us back to the beginning of the cycle, right? Capture. You apply the lessons from analyze, express, and reflect to your next outing with the camera. You get to repeat the successes you've already had. You get the opportunity to tell a stronger story, capturing a scene a different way the next time you're out with the camera. For example, in some of the photos of mine I've done this, I realize I look at the image and I don't even know what the subject is. It's a plain truth, and it stings a little, actually, when you realize it. It means I didn't really know why I took the picture, or I didn't spend enough time in the field understanding what it was about that scene that caught my eye and made me press the shutter in the first place. It could be something else for you. Maybe it could be compositional, separation of elements, or where they are placed in the frame. It could be to get closer to the subject. It could be a different depth of field. You get the idea here, because when you get very good at this cycle, capture, analyze, express, reflect, when you're out in the field making the capture, you might already be thinking about the express phase. You see more than just what's in front of your lens. You'll visualize what it can become. So I encourage you, get yourself into this cycle of artistic improvement. Capture, analyze, express, and reflect. And you can start today, right, in analyze. I think that's a good place to start because you have photos already. Take a few of your images, look through them, maybe reprocess them if there's something you've done before. Reflect on that. And then take those lessons to your next outing with the camera, and then keep doing it. You'll grow as a visual storyteller and improve as a photographer. Thanks as always to members of the Patreon community. It is your pledges that keep this podcast on the air. You are fueling the engine, keeping the train moving week in and week out. I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you. I'm happy that this particular week I have tangible things to give you to say thank you. A couple of the videos from this upcoming course that will give you a taste of this cycle of artistic improvement. So if you haven't been to the Patreon feed this week, go on over there. There's a couple of videos waiting for you. And if you're interested in learning about the Patreon community, check the show notes. There's a link there, and you can see what's going on, kind of the types of things that we talk about there. There's also many zero-cost ways you can support this podcast. So hit the support button in the show notes. Also, there's a support the show button on every page of Stop Down Podcast where you can learn more. And Patreon members, when I finish this course, it will be available to you for free. One more way I can thank you for your continued support of this podcast and my work. And that will wrap it up for this week. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you get yourself on this cycle of improvement. And if you got questions, you want to reach out, I'd love to hear from you. Contact form on stopdownpodcast.com sends messages directly to me, no robots. And until next time, my name's Scott Davenport. Have fun.